G'day and welcome to David Josh Ford episode 100, if you can believe it. And on today's show, we're going to take a look at part 2 of the ATEM, not the ATEM Mini, the Mac Mini. There's so many minis in this production world. Last week we looked at live streaming, but today I want to look more at the sort of media server setup side of it and how to use that as remote media management, and also some Davinci Resolve remote editing. And towards the end, stick around, I'm gonna give you my main tips for setting the Mac Mini up in a headless manner. By headless, I mean, I'm using this more as a server in the background, and I'm not actually attaching directly a keyboard or a monitor or a mouse. It means you don't have to run a whole new workstation, and you can free up your workstation. So for example, I've got my main workstation here. That is where I do my editing from, but now the Mac Mini is sitting in the rack over the back here and can handle media rendering and file copying and Resolve remote editing and remote rendering from Resolve. So we're gonna step through all of that today and take a look at it. So let's kick off and take a look at the first part, which is really the network setup. So when we're setting up a Mac Mini in a headless manner, what are we going to need to connect to this? What equipment do we need? And some things that you might have, but you might want to upgrade as well. So let's jump back into my, gotta jump into my document here and put that full screen. And we'll come over to this one. So last week, as mentioned, we were talking about live streaming, and so this was using the Mac Mini, which I'm doing right now, more in a rack server, and I've got my workstation sitting over there and controlling it. But this week, I want to look at Mac Mini M4 Pro as a headless media server, so that's using things like Resolve across 2 computers. And this could be the first setup that we have, which is my main workstation, which is actually an M1 MacBook Pro M1 Max. Is I upgraded the dock. So the one that I've got now is a OWC 10 gigabit Ethernet, and the main reason I got this was for the gigabit Ethernet. I do have already, I had a previous OWC dock. Let me see if I can jump across to show you what we have in here. This is my Air. So under the desk where I have the laptops stored here, then I have the docks. So this is what is actually connecting the workstation to the rack, and this is the new dock that's in here. This was the old one, so I can still run another laptop or something here if I want to on a 1 gigabit, but now this one is a 10 gigabit Ethernet connection, and that's sort of the main reason why that I got that dock. You know, it's probably $350, and I've been mostly happy with it. Sometimes feel like media card drops out, but related to networking issues, networking has been great. And so with this dock, it means that I can get into the network at a much faster speed, because previously 1 gig, even though it was networked here, real world usage was like I wasn't using it because it takes too long. And if something is faster for you to, step across the studio and plug a drive in, then you're gonna do that, because you don't want your copying times to take 40 minutes when you can do it in like 3 minutes. So that's why we've got 10 gigabit Ethernet connection. I'll jump back over here. So that's my sort of chain, is like Thunderbolt from the Mac workstation to the dock, and then we've got a 10 gigabit Ethernet to the 10 gigabit switch, which is not so exciting. It's a little box. I can't show this one because it is in the rack up the back. I'll chuck this one down here. Again, that's another $300. So it's not cheap to sort of upgrade the network side of this, but definitely worth it, because I now actually use it all the time, whereas previously it was all networked but not using it. So, and then when we get to, let me cut to, what do we got back here? So then we're gonna get to the Mac Mini. So that's the Mac Mini M4 Pro is what I've got. I got the Pro version because I wanted do a lot of video encoding in the background, and I also I got the 10 gigabit Ethernet port on that. But otherwise, it's base level Mac. And I would say if you do want to save the money, because that was probably $1,400 or something for this Mac Mini Pro, you can get the base level Mac Mini as $600 approximately. And I would recommend even just doing that and saving the money. Your video speeds will be a little bit slower to render. And you may want to get a hub to get a faster network connection, but you could also save a lot of money on getting a just entry-level Mac Mini. And then because it's in a rack, you're going to have storage anyway attached to it. So that's the Mac Mini side of it. The next thing that we have is the Blackmagic Cloud Pod. This is something I bought a while ago, and it's sort of a way of getting regular hard drives onto your network as network attached storage. And so you can, particularly useful for going on gigs, like taking your live stream rack out into the field, because you're not transporting a whole massive NAS. So I'll show you what that looks like over here. So this is our network setup, and then connected into the switch, we're going to have this Cloud Pod. And that is basically 10 gigabit Ethernet, but you can run 2 USBs out of the back of it, but they're 5 gigabit speed. So effectively, you've got a 5 gigabit network drive, which is enough to do video editing with storage. The storage that I'm using is I've got a G-RAID and a solid state hard drive. So that looks like this. I just had from years ago, had a 20 terabyte RAID storage there. And so I was able to just plug that in, and now it's network attached. So it's nice because it's just always on in the rack, and that 20 terabytes is accessible. And I put a lot of storage things on there. And then for faster editing, I've got the solid state drive. And I did an approximate speed test there that you'll see with them. But for editing 4K or 8K footage, 378 megabytes, I don't know if that's fast enough. But 4K, I usually work with like proxy workflow, so it's plenty fast enough. And so Sandisk for high speeder editing, but I actually do most of my editing on the G-RAID just because, and I'll show you the sort of media flow there. All right, so that's that one. And then the next one is actually sort of looking at archiving, because I use sort of a process that I've developed over years of traveling backwards and forwards with to Australia. Was needing more portable disks, and so the route that I went was adding in just very run-of-the-mill, 5 terabyte Western Digital My Passport drives, and I've bought 40, 50 so more of these to date, and they've all been pretty good. I think I had one problem, but I feel like that might have been because it had been formatted as an APFS file, as opposed to just the regular, macOS journaled format. So as long as you're sticking with the macOS journaled format, this has been reliable for me. And I now have about 20 hard drives, and then I've got a secondary pair. So, 40 hard drives for photography, for media, and then I also keep a separate sort of archive backup of my main finished projects. So previously there was a lot of switching out these drives, and now it means whatever my current drive is, my sort of stack of 5 terabyte that's accessible, is attached, and it's much faster for me to back up because I can just sort of set this stuff to run, and I can leave the studio and access it overnight. So that's kind of how I set that up in terms of my workflow here. I'm just going to get rid of my face. And that's kind of the studio setup that I have, which gives me 10 gigabit throughput from the 2 Macs, and then 5 gigabit with the storage. And it's been good so far. Something to consider is that if you don't spend $300 or more on all this stuff, there are some more cost-effective 5 gigabit and 2.5 gigabit Ethernet hubs and stuff. So when you get it from Amazon, they're probably like $30 each. So this one's like a wavelength, which is USB-C to a 5 gig output. And this one's like a Wavelength dock, which is 2.5 gigabits network, and then it's also got like an HDMI and a USB and power and all that kind of stuff. So you could run your whole laptop off that. So I bought a couple of these because sometimes when I add in an additional laptop or something, I don't want to be plugging into a 1 gigabit connection. I do want to get that faster. So that is some things that can increase the speed. But yeah, again, if you don't want to spend, you know, $350 on the OWC and $300 on a 10 gigabit switch, then there are some other ways of doing it, maybe like 5 or 2.5 gigabits, which is gonna help. Like you're gonna notice the advantage of speed time. Lastly, before we move on to sort of all the applications of running this together, I just would take a look at some speed, I don't know if I say speed tests, but like I showed you here, I've got about, I've got my G-RAID for sort of bulk archive stuff, and then I've got my editing drive and then my archive drives. And so and then also nicely on the network, you can also access the ATEM Extreme. So my workflow, for example, like when I do a show like this, everything is backed up. Everything is isolated, recorded onto the ATEM Extreme. And then across the network, so I don't actually have to unplug the drive or anything like that. I can simply, from my main workstation, drag the files from the ATEM Extreme across to usually the G-RAID. And then the Mac Mini will automatically go to work making proxies of that. And then I can actually go home and edit up a show like that. So that's kind of the workflow of the files. And then, I'm just saying both computers have access to the network storage. And this is what I was trying to show you, was the drive speeds here, approximate, read and write. So this was sort of speeds I was pulling through. This is from my main workstation trying to access these disks. So the G-RAID and the solid state are pulling 122 megabytes a second and 378 megabytes for the Sandisk 4 terabyte SSD here. That's via the Cloud Pod, remember? And then the archive media here was pulling more like 83 megabytes. So that's fine for backing up and that kind of stuff. But otherwise, it's fast enough to do the archiving, and then for editing, I've got the speed there. As we go along, let me know if you have any questions, and I'll just sort of run through this part of the presentation, and then we'll go through the questions if you have anything along the way with that. All right, let's take a look at part 2, and we're going to talk about remote media management and also Davinci Resolve Rendering. So this is once we've set up our network, what are the actual applications that we need to run this? I think we're good. Just getting a flashing light here. I think we're good. So I'm going to jump over here. Okay. So the first one that I use is Carbon Copy Cloner, which is a way of sort of backing up and archiving my drives here. So let's go over to my drive here, and we can go over here. All right, so we can see I'm using, where is it down here? Screen sharing to bring that on air, to bring that up here, and I'm gonna make that full screen. So this is my Mac Mini, and just sort of pulling up the applications there. 1 second, carbon copy. Okay, so on my window within a window of the Mac Mini, let's just pull up my dock so I can see what I'm doing. So carbon copy is what I'm using here. It will just sort of run in the background, and when these drives are reconnected, it runs a backup copy. So I mentioned I have 20 hard drives, but I've also got another 20 clones of them. And so carbon copy is what is keeping the files up to date and making sure that I've got 2 pairs of it, and I should have really a 3rd pair elsewhere, but 2 pairs in 2 locations, and then it just means if there's drive failure or something, then I've got a backup copy. So that's that one. The next one is the Blackmagic Proxy Generator, which I've been using to go through and compress a lot of my video archives. So like I was saying, I've been doing this for, I don't know, 20 years of video production. And I think particularly in the last, 10 years, as we've gone 4K and 8K, my data usage has gone sort of exponentially bigger and bigger. What used to fill up a couple of drives now fills up like a lot more drives for a project. You go shoot a project and it's 1.5 terabytes or something. So you've got to put that somewhere. So I have been going through and just sort of assessing my archives and trying to work out what I want to. I generally keep everything, but there's some things that I'm probably never going to edit again, and so I can really like compress that down. So my rule of thumb has been, if it's nicely shot B-roll, or if it's a client project that I think might resurface one day, then I keep that original footage. But if it's like a corporate head talking for hours on end and it was years ago and I'm probably never going to see that project again, then I still I keep it, but I want to compress it because in the event that I need to use the footage, I have a decent quality that would pass on the internet, but saves me it's like 1/10 of the space. So there's a couple of applications that I've been going through and doing that. One has been the Blackmagic Proxy Generator, which you could get for free, I'm pretty sure. If you download Davinci, it should be all included. So I have my Cloud Pod connected at the moment. But normally what I've been doing is going through I think I had one ready to delete here. So like all of my past live streams, I'll go through this and find the ATEM files, and I'll dump all this into the Blackmagic Proxy Generator. I'm using this setting here, H.265 10-bit 420 1080p. The good thing about this is it actually saves it as 10-bit, and it's also like 6 megabit a second. So it's quite compressed, but the 10-bit color space just means you don't get the really nasty banding across it that you might otherwise get. This is also what I use for editing, is that setting for proxies that we'll get to in a bit. But to compress things like, okay, so my ATEM mini rig video that I did years ago that was all shot at 1080, and I'm probably not going to recut it. I've got the master copy, but if I need to have all those isolated files, then I can pull it back from here. So that is a file that, if I open that one up in QuickTime, you can see 1920 1080, 36 megabytes, data rate 4.25 megabit. That's like really small. But the main thing is we're using HEVC, so it's a newer format, more efficient at compressing it compared to the H.264 file that it was recorded at. Let me just click over here, check on that. All right, so we've got those files, and I had something to delete. I'll get to these ones in a second. I don't have any examples there, but we'll get to that in just a second. So this is what I've been using for footage that is 1080p already, because it's super easy to grab a top level folder and just drag it into Blackmagic Proxy Generator, and this is just on and it spits it out. And then I'll go through and just delete the original media and use the proxy media, which is now my new master backup media. All right, the next one is using Davinci Resolve's clip timeline for the same sort of compression, but in a scenario where you don't have 1080 footage, you've got 4K. So there are times where I'm taking 4K or 8K footage and compressing it down to 1080. Maybe it's a corporate interview that is done, but I just want to keep a copy of that in case we need it, and so it's compressed down to 1080, and that's fine. But there's other times where I want to keep the 4K resolution, and unfortunately, the Blackmagic Proxy Generator, while being simple and easy to use, it's also like really restrictive in these 4 settings that we have here. Like literally the only thing you can choose is H.264 in 8-bit half res or full res, or H.265 1080 or else ProRes. So Blackmagic, if you are watching, please make this so that you can build your own preset, because that would be much more powerful to be able to select a preset that actually works for what you want in terms of the bit rate, the resolution, all that kind of stuff. This would be amazing just to run in the background. But so because this is not going to work for footage that I want to compress, but I want to keep 4K or 8K, then we can't use Blackmagic Proxy Generator. We're going to instead use Davinci Resolve. There's other ways of doing this. Okay, I got a remote rendering on. I got to turn that one off. Let's turn off remote rendering. I could actually just bring in my other window. What have I got here? My archive compression. I think I was using that one. Let's go back here. Archive compression. So this is where you can, in a timeline, which I'm not sure if it's connected. I was just dumping something out here. You can just grab screen deck. Do I have files here? Let me go make this bigger so I can see this. You can basically grab all of your files. So just say you had a whole lot of files, which I don't have here. I need some files. There we go, some video files. And you can just drag them into a timeline like that. And then if you go over to the render page, you can just go individual clips. So I'd go like file name, just use the source name, audio, whatever you want. And then the video, whatever settings, like maybe you want to go to H.265. But the main thing here is clicking individual clips. And once you've done individual clips, it'll actually spit out all of these files as individual clips and with the same source name file. And then we can come into video, set it something like H.265. You could have, you know, this is set to UHD already, but you could choose whatever resolution you want. And then you can just choose your bit rate. And so for 4K footage, I've been setting it around about 50 megabit. So it'd be 50 and then 1, 2, 3. So 50,000 kilobits a second. And main 10 means that we're maintaining that sort of 10-bit resolution there. And then we can go add to render queue, and I'll just do that now. Add to render queue, and then just render that out, and it'll spit out the files. And then you can have a whole batch of files that you are compressing down to 4K or 8K, whatever you want your resolution to be. And so that's what I've been using to compress my 4K footage. Let me just go to, I'm just gonna close this one down. And give me a second. And we'll take a look at what is the result. And we can delete some things. So I think this one's gone, but I had like a green screen project back in the pandemic, which was shot on 3 RED cameras, and it was something like 1.3 terabytes. And I was like, you know, we're never going to recut this, so I can, where are we? This kind of stuff, footage which doesn't look great through the screen sharing, but should be. I can pull this up on because this is on the network, I can go to my computer, and we was on, what did I put that on? The network. It's on my Mini, and I can connect to all of my local drives as well. And we were connecting to this one, and we're going in here just to bring up the files. Okay, so this should be playing the file locally, and much cleaner. Hopefully that comes through the live stream. But you know, you in a pinch, if you needed to, you could pull a chroma key because it's 10-bit. You know, it's not the ideal way to do a project from scratch, but you know, the project's already been done and it's been 4 years ago. And so now, you know, do I want 1.3 terabytes of archive? I don't. And so instead I can, let's go back into the Mac Mini, and I can go into here. And so my 1.3 terabytes, you can see up here, became 100 gig, 102 gig. And so that saved me well over a terabyte of storage space, less drives, less things to manage. And I was thinking about it the other day, actually. It's also more likely that I would actually sort of go in and sort of pull clips out of this footage because it's very quick to sift through and put it into some sort of sizzle reel. Like before, when I was going through, if you got the R3D files and you got 1.3 terabytes and you need to get that onto a fast storage, then you're sort of like copying the whole thing over and then sifting through to find the clips. And so it's more efficient from that view. So that was that one, 104. And the other one I was going to delete on air. Where are we? Original. Okay, so this was a project that I shot back in 2021. Again, in the pandemic, I'm sort of up to the pandemic age of archiving and sort of like compressing my archive. So I was using a C200 and a 5D Mark IV, which was really an efficient codec. So you can see 112, well, let's select the actual footage here. Here, so the original footage is 107 gigabytes up here. And then I created these proxies, which if I select them, 5.3 gigs, so massive space saving there. So what I would do is I've rendered that out and I just go in and I'm gonna delete my raw. And the C200 likewise, the raw C200 footage was, let's go back a level, 234 gigabytes. And instead I've created proxies that are 12 gig, so huge space saving there, which is great. Okay, and still good quality. Enough to do, a project with if I decided that hey, this clip of New York City looks amazing, let's pull it into a project. And so now I have, actually, let's go back to undo that one. So what was our project? Our project was, where are we? 361 gigabytes. And so now if I delete the raw footage, delete that one, and delete that one, then it's now down to 19 gig. So, this is the reason I'm doing this, is because there's real space savings of all these hard drives in here and just makes it more manageable. And there's something also about curating it too. I think you got to think about as the decades go on and you have all this footage, what are you doing all that? So that's where I've been able to use the Mac Mini to run all this stuff in the background, and I can, go away overnight and it just keeps on running and I don't have to think about unplugging it. All right, so the next one is I'm going to talk about the Cloud Pod and the Dropbox connection, because I've set it up so that it's only syncing the proxies over Dropbox and not the full media. Let's go back to my little diagram over here. Can I bring that one back? I'll bring back my network diagram. All right, so this was our setup where I've got my, where are we? The Mac Mini is, sorry, so I've done a shoot and I am using my workstation's OWC Thunderbolt Pro dock here to import the footage, which I was shooting something earlier today and I did that. And so I used this Mac with the media reader here at my desk. So that is this shot. Oh, new camera today. Because I was shooting something on a different teleprompter. And you can probably see that. So shooting on the R5C, had a media card, put it in here at my main workstation, and then I'm copying it into the rack, which is over there in the corner. And I'm gonna go to, where was I? This one? All right, and so that's copying it to the Cloud Pod. So via the switch, via the Cloud Pod, onto the G-RAID. And then because the G-RAID is, because the Mac Mini is set up with the proxy generator, this is watching folders on the G-RAID, and anytime a new video turns up here, it's just generating proxies. But then the Cloud Pod is set up to upload to Dropbox just the proxies. So hopefully that makes sense. Let me see if I can, let me get out of here and let me hide this one over here so I can see. All right, so on my, where is it? Cloud Store setup over here. So I can access the Cloud Store. Dun, dun, dun. Waiting for it to open. Where is it? It's over here. Hang on, it's on my other screen. Gotta drag that one across. Okay, Cloud Store. So this is what the settings, this is like you set it up and you give it a network address, and then you can turn on Cloud Sync. And so I've set up the Blackmagic Cloud Pod with my Dropbox. So you can do Blackmagic Cloud Sync, and it does sort of automate some things. I didn't like that route because I felt like when I automated proxies, I would change something and they would make new proxies, and there was just like a ton of proxies being created. Maybe I was doing something wrong, but I sort of preferred to go this route of Dropbox, which I already pay for on an annual basis, and I was able to use that connected to the Cloud Pod. And under here, you'll see for media files, sync proxies only is turned on. And so what that means is, this is my Mac Mini, and you'll see I've got my G-RAID, which I dumped some recordings to earlier today that I'm making a video for you guys about this stuff. And it was under, I'm doing one on Companion Buddy. So where are we? Original R5C. And so this is the one that I dumped onto the G-RAID, and then this is the proxy file. So this is the original file, talking about that. And then this is the other file. So now this proxy file, you'll see here on the G-RAID, I can see both files. But if I go to, let me just go to make a new window. Okay, so now if I go to bring in another window, now this is the Finder on my laptop, my workstation laptop. So imagine I've left the studio and I've gone home, and either on this laptop or on another laptop that I have at home, I have Dropbox connected, and I've got this same Blackmagic, where are we? BMD Cloud Pod folder, and all of these show up here, and then I can just choose what I want to download from here. So it means that if you've got a laptop, like I've got a MacBook Air at home, which has 250 gig of storage, like nothing, it means I can just grab the project that I want to work on and grab the proxies. So we were looking at Companion Buddies, this is the original footage, and then the proxy on the sub-level. So let's go Companion Buddy, and then I had R5C proxy, and you'll see here, I know these things are a long way apart. Double click this, double click this. Ah, okay, man, Max. Proxy, you can see here in this level, there should be that file there, but it's not there. And so this is what the Cloud Pod is managing, which is knowing what is a proxy and what is the original media. And this is good because it means that setting it to proxies only, I had a 4.61 gigabyte file down here, and that's on my studio computer, but the proxy is 88 megabytes. And so much faster to start working with that back at home. Also, just, the drive space is like, if you have a base level computer, it doesn't come with much storage. So, so that's sort of the workflow I have with generating proxies. And so let's make sure I've got the next one lined up here. Roll timeline rendering. Yes, okay, make sure I'm on the right one here. And yeah, so that's been good. All right. Next up, let's take a look at Davinci Resolve Remote Timeline Rendering. And I'm using this via the Blackmagic Cloud projects. So I've got two Macs, and they're sort of talking to each other. To set this up, you're going to need, I don't know if you need the studio. I think you can do this on the free version as well. But if I come back to my diagram over here, let's go over here to this one. And okay, so essentially I've got my, I've got two computers, right? So I've got my main workstation, which has Davinci Resolve on it, and that's the one I'm editing on. It's a laptop, but it's connected to screens and that kind of stuff. And then I've introduced a Mac Mini without any sort of monitor or keyboard, but it's just in the background available on the network so that I can use it. And then I'm also running Davinci Resolve on that machine. So I've got two copies of Resolve, one on the main one on the Mini, and I'm going to use the Mini to do the rendering so that I can keep working on my main workstation in this scenario. So again, we've connected via 10 gigabit Ethernet to the Mac Mini, and all of our storage is on the Cloud Pod connected to a solid state drive or G-RAID or whatever it is. And that is what I'm using to connect. So if I get this fellow out of the way, let me go to here. And the way that this works is on the Mac Mini, if I come back to here, when you open up Resolve, there's 3 different libraries that you can use. One is just a local library, which is just a file on your local computer. That's it, very simple. The other one is the network. So this is where you can run your own server on your network locally, and you would have the Mac Mini, for example, managing the project database so that when you've got multiple computers connecting to it, it knows what's happening and people aren't overriding things. So we're talking about the project here. We're not talking about the actual media, like the video files. That's separate, that we can get to in a bit. But rather than doing network, I've just found the easiest way is to use the Blackmagic Cloud. You can get it for $5 a month just to get a project library, and then you can log into it on both computers. And this means that both computers can speak to each other while I'm in the studio on the network here locally, and they're also sharing the same storage locally. But then if I leave and I go home to a third computer that is totally remote, then all of this stuff is in the cloud and it syncs. And so this is sort of a neat way of using Resolve in a networked manner, but sort of the cloud version of this. Okay, so you could have multiple editors, add in more computers to do your editing. And then when we come to exporting this, that's where I'm going to come to my local computer here. So we have the computer here. I'm going to come over to, so now we're looking at my local computer. And I'm going to go back to, I think I had something open. Okay, so I'm just going to use my proxy generator. Where did that go? Oh, archive compression, this one. Okay, so this is where on my archive compression, do I have anything open in there? I've got a bunch of files. Let me just delete those, and we'll say, here's a little project that I have, which is very web browser. This page has to be in the foreground. I got a bunch of audio. It's a mess. There's clips in there, and this is editing on my local computer, and then I'm going to go to, so that's the local computer, and then I'm going to go to my Mac Mini, and all I really need to do is turn on, where are we? Remote rendering here. So you can either just be in the cloud panel. You can either click on the workspace, go to remote rendering, or you can sort of right click in any space and go to remote rendering. And that'll open up a very inefficient page, which shows you the render page, but I think it could be, there's a lot of dead screen real estate here, but essentially this is locked out the program so that the Mac Mini is now in a remote render phase, and we're going to go do the remote rendering. So let me go, that's the Mac Mini. Let's go to my main Mac. So here we are. All right, so I've got my project, and I'm going to jump over to exporting this, and I could choose where I want to export it to. I'm just going to go back to Come on. We're going to go to graid and just going to dump it on the root level there. And I'm going to get rid of that one. So I've got my cool timeline here. And I'm going to choose my format. So maybe I'll just go H265 and I want to give it a name, demo, audio, video. We've got our videos, all that. We just add it to the render queue like that. So now I've got my video here. And instead of hitting render roll down here, we can come up here instead and go choose a computer to send it to. And I'm just going to pick mini. And this will go blue here. And then I can just go render all. And it says ready for remote rendering. And you can see automatically in the background, the Mac Mini has started creating the file. And I can't do anything on here, but if I go over to Mac Mini, window within Windows gets me Resolve. Okay. So on my local computer, I can right click, reveal in Finder, and you'll see now the graid has output web browser, this little video that was a demo. So that's, the nice thing about that is you can then use your main workstation to keep editing, because I should say, like, while that is rendering, I should have had a longer clip, but it doesn't lock up your program. So it sent it to the Mini, and then I can jump back over into my edit page and keep on editing other things. So it just gives you an additional workhorse, and it means that you, I guess, no longer get that coffee break that you would have had when you set something to render. Where I'm up to, so lastly on this section, I just want to talk about VPN because I've talked about using it away from here. I've been using a Unifi Ubiquity router, mostly because within the software is really easy VPN settings. In the settings page, you can basically click, export teleport settings and email a file. And then even on like an iPhone or on a Mac, that's where I can just click to access the VPN. Let me see if I could show on this one. Like this. So on the phone, I could connect to the VPN that is set up there, or else on the computer, I can go to, where is it? Just here and show network settings. And I go over here. And VPN, and then Unified Teleport is, I can just switch that on. So basically, when I'm at home on my Mac, I just hit that button to turn it on. And then about 5 seconds, the VPN's running, and I'm back in my studio environment, which means I can do my companion programming here. I can run the whole live stream remotely, or I can basically bring up the screen sharing app and I can see what's happening with the Mac Mini, and I can, set a new task to run or see if something's copied from, it just frees me up because, sometimes you come back from a shoot and you want to copy media and get things going, but you also want to get home. So it means that you can kind of just plug in all the media, have it copying across and rendering and all that kind of stuff while you're away, and then you could just check in on that and set a new task and come in the next day and you're good to go. So it can speed up things a lot. All right, part 3, let's take a look at my Mac Mini setup tips, because if you're trying to set up the Mac Mini in a headless fashion, there's a couple of things that I found that really helped me trial by error to make it so it's actually easy to run in a headless manner. The first one that you'll want to do is connect a keyboard and mouse and HDMI monitor to the Mac Mini. Just for the setup stage, you can sort of do it remotely, but the macOS really wants you to log in locally to set up those credentials for the first time. what was I going to say? No, and then you're good to go. The next one is to set up the computer with the same iCloud account as your other computer. This means if you have the sort of Mac OS handoff in terms of peripherals, you can actually sort of get your screens and your peripherals from one computer to play nicely with that because they need the same iCloud account. Also, there might be applications that you've bought on one iCloud account that you want to bring onto that computer. So I've gone the route of my main workstation has the same iCloud account, and it's just made administering that really easy. I think the biggest tip that I have is to turn off FileVault. Now, when you start up a Mac Mini for the first time, the sort of default option that you're led towards is to turn FileVault on. And if you're just using it normally, then you probably should have that on for, you know, encryption, being more secure, that kind of stuff. But the problem with FileVault is that you need to locally log into the computer using a local sort of keyboard and mouse. And so if you ever reboot your computer when you're remote, then it's going to come to the login screen and it's wanting someone to like type in like a local login. So turn off FileVault and then you'll be able to remotely log in to the computer. The next thing to do is to turn in your settings and sharing, turn on file sharing and screen sharing. So what that looks like is over here. Go to settings, you can just type in screen sharing. So in sharing, oops, too far down the chain, sharing, like that. Under file sharing, turn that on, screen sharing, turn that one on. The other ones that you could turn on that I've got for the Mac Mini is remote management and remote login is what I was using there. File sharing, obviously, it means you can share files across the network. Screen sharing means that you can get this display here of seeing what is going on the desktop and running apps and moving it around. And the screen sharing works really well. It's like, I've never had a problem with like latency and that kind of stuff. It's better than a Zoom call, if that makes sense in terms of screen control. All right. And so the next one is if you go to settings, energy, and then automatically start up after a power failure, and also prevent screens from automatically sleeping. So again, if we go to automatically start up power failure, startup, I think it was battery, under battery. Prevent automatic sleeping, this is my main computer, but the Mac Mini has this one on. And wait for network access. Maybe I'll go into my actual Mac Mini down here. Under so many settings, I always get lost, and I'm not even on camera. So let's go back here. Displays, let me work down here. Desktop and dock, not that one. Screensaver, I always get lost in here. Wake for network access. Where are we? Energy mode, automatic is fine. Prevent automatic sleeping when display is off, because there is no display attached most of the time. I do have this plugged into my ATEM, so when I power on my ATEM, then that's getting screen outputs from the Mac Mini into the ATEM. But otherwise, it's just no virtual screen. Hides just asleep when possible. I put that on because there's times where it's just sitting there and doing nothing, and so I want to just sort of put them to sleep. Wait for network access, you want to have that, and start up automatically after a power failure means that if you lose power, it'll reboot and you don't have to travel across the world to power it back on, just to press that button. I think that's about it. Okay, the other one that I had was enable displays as separate spaces, because otherwise apps like Teleprompter or PowerPoint, that kind of stuff, will take over all of the screens and black it out. And displays, let me see if I can display settings, somewhere in there. I should really, I don't know if displays are inactive. Displays as separate spaces. Mac settings, man, I tell you, I should have done a screenshot of this, because like trying to find them is my hot tip. Displays under blah, 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 blah. Okay, somewhere in there, lock screens. Displays have separate spaces. Somewhere in there. I'm gonna move on because it's like I could be lost in here. That's why it is my tip, go find it. And then the other one is automatically launching apps and also your network drives when you log in. It helps if you're running a machine and there's remotely and you want certain things to just always be on. I know where this one is, so we can go to that one. So under settings, under general, under login items, it's a bit easier to find. These are all the apps that I'm using. So for live streaming, I've got things like Companion, HDR Graphics, Light Key, Social Stream, VLC. These are all, so every time I reboot this computer for whatever reason, all those apps are on and they're now available on my network for other computers and things to make use of them. Like Light Key, for example, is like, I don't need to be in the app because I can run on the Stream Deck, but the lights need the app to be on for it to know what to do. And then the Blackmagic Proxy Generator, obviously, I just want that on and running in the background because that's gonna be watching for encoding. And then the last one that you may not think about, but a nice little tip is just adding in network drives. So you can either hit the plus icon down here and, man, where did that go? Did I hit it? Here we go. And you can go back to your computer level, do a little search. And this is where you could just select the actual network drive. I've already done it, so I won't, instead of, I'm gonna cancel, but you'd go open. And then it's basically gonna put your network drives in there so that when you reboot a computer, the network drives will already be attached. So if you're then opening Resolve or something and you're using files on the network, then it's already online. So yeah, that's what I have going with that. All right, I know there's people in chat and haven't got there yet, so let me take a quick look here. Let me see. Tuning in here. All right, Jesse Hernandez says, have you utilized any NAS storage? I have my ATEM Extreme ISO as a NAS. Sorry, I can't quite see this. I have my ATEM Mini Extreme ISO as a NAS with a few external SSDs and a USB 4 hub. It just shows up under the network storage for all my computers. So I've never actually bought like a proper NAS. As I said, I had that G-RAID from years ago that was just kind of sitting there, and it's, you know, it's a not super fast, but it's fast enough to just kind of chuck it on the network. And now I've got, you know, was it 130 megabytes a second copying across that. The reason I went with the Cloud Pod, partly because it was cheap. When it's on sale, you can get it for like $200, and I think it's normally about $400. I wouldn't pay that for it, but just pay, you know, $200 whenever it's on sale, and then you can attach 2 USB drives. I don't know if you could plug in a hub and get more. That'd be interesting. I should check that out. But I've just gone the route of the SSD for sort of slightly faster speeds, and then this G-RAID 20 terabyte just kind of gives me plenty of space. And I think the thought behind that was also, I want to fit this into my live streaming rack, and I want to be able to port that around, maybe not the country, but like, you know, interstate. And I don't want to carry a NAS. And so the Blackmagic Cloud Pod is a cheap and efficient way of getting semi-fast storage into a portable format. So that's the reason I sort of went that route. Jesse, are you still using VLC for your media playback? Great question. I have it available, and I've set up my Mac Mini to be the VLC playback machine. Let me see if I can, how would I show you this? I got a program, and I think I can cut to multi-view 2. Here we go. All right, so you'll see the bottom 3 screens, 6, 7, and 8, which is the Mac Mini's output. So the first one is the VLC playback. So if I played back something on VLC, that would go full screen into input 6 here. And then my input 7 is my teleprompter, which I've been using as, I'm sort of building something in Google Sheets and Companion. So that's what my teleprompter looks like at the moment in terms of, I've built a whole bunch of clocks. So I can see I've got 4 minutes until the end of the show on the clocks, and also like in terms of what next, what I've got to talk about next week, that kind of stuff. So that's the 3 outputs that I'm having there, and then H2R, the green screen on the end, is that. So I've been using VLC on the Mac Mini if I need to play a video in a pinch, and the show opener when I run that on video, and also the music is actually played off the Hyperdeck now. So Jesse, how are we dialing in the spreadsheet so that it creates chapter markers automatically? I'm using DJF log, which needs an update to bring that in. But so on my website, so it's something I've built through Companion, which is basically using Companion's Google Sheets API plugin and the YouTube plugin. And so I have and I've been through this in other episodes, but I'll go over it in another couple of weeks, which is basically in a Google Sheet spreadsheet. I have a run of show of different items, and that is being pulled into Companion, and I'm advancing through queues, which are both content queues and technical queues. And then when I advance a queue, had a lot of content that was going through today and a lot of subheaders. And so that is getting stamped into YouTube when it happens. And you'll see that sort of keep on going. If you look at the description of this video, those things will appear as they happen. So using Companion basically on the back end, which I can sort of go into in another episode, but I have been over it in the last couple of weeks. So take a look back at that. If you have any questions, let me know and I can sort of clarify it, but it's probably a little more complicated than I can explain in a couple of minutes. Jesse, again, thanks for all the questions, Jesse. I just switched over to an ATEM Constellation 2ME HD. That's what I have as well. In addition to the SDI Extreme ISO, that's what I have as well. What are the benefits of the bigger switcher should I try out? Good question. Just make sure I'm doing the right thing. Yes. I love this combination because it gives me 20 inputs to do things with, and then in the 2ME, and then the ATEM Extreme ISO becomes an 8-track recorder. It's like $1,500 for the 8-track recorder. If you were trying to do 4K, you're probably spending about $10,000 to do the equivalent, which is why I haven't gone up to 4K recording, even though I am live streaming in 4K to YouTube. But you should play with more inputs, is what I would say. So the advantage of having more inputs is that you can get more creative with what you put into your multi-viewer. And so these are sort of like things that will assist you in your production rather than being the end image on air. So let me jump back over to this one, I think it was. Okay, that's my confidence monitor. So I've got 2 multi-views coming out of the 2ME. This is the way that on the teleprompter in front of me, this is the way that I set that one up. Let me just get rid of the question here. So I've got my program on the right side so I can see what's going on. And then on the left side, instead of preview, which I would have if I was directing a job, but when I'm presenting, I want to see information of what's next. And so I have the Mac Mini output showing me a teleprompter of sorts in terms of my next cue, and then the end of the show, which according to this should be in 53 seconds. But we'll go a little bit over. I'm playing with like, should I be exact in terms of timing? But I've also built, so here's a good example of what I've got here, which is in my confidence monitor on the left, I've got the text in a browser, and then below that in a companion button, I've got timers. So I'm using that and just as a video input source to put that up on the screen in there. But then I've also got, Let me see how I could show you that. I don't know if I can show you this very well, but maybe if I cut to go back to my program view, and then we'll go to Air. Okay, whoop. So this is my view here. So in my teleprompter, so I've got my confidence monitor, but then my line of sight is in my teleprompter. And I've also set up this screen so that when I advance through my cues, these are the things going onto YouTube, I've got a 5-second, so this is an auxiliary from the ATEM 2ME output, and I can control my floor monitor as one multi-view, and then my confidence monitor is a different multi-view, and then my teleprompter is a third output. And when I advance to the next cue, my teleprompter puts this input, so my text of like what I'm talking about next, it puts it up into the teleprompter for 5 seconds. I can change how long I want it, but 5 seconds. So it switches the input and it holds the text there for a bit, just so it gives me something that I can, come back to here, something that I can read off. So if I'm trying to, I've got like 6 different pieces of equipment and I'm like, okay, I'm talking about the OWC Thunderbolt dock. And so it just gives me a little prompt, and so I can talk to you while that comes up. So that's a really nice cheat and a way of using your 2ME. The other thing that you could do, which I was showing a while ago now, and I think I could, how would I put this up? I can show you on the multi-view again. I don't know if you can see in, just under the program, so the top, just below the top right corner, it's not very well laid out, but I've actually got the 2ME in there, so program 2, and I'm using a Luma key of the teleprompter over the program feed. So I'll come back, that's a bit messy. But that just, if I was sort of playing around with that, but maybe something you could play with is, if you got and teleprompters are great. If you got a teleprompter, it gives you an idea of what's on program, because otherwise I'd be talking to you about something's on screen and I'm not showing you. So that shows me, make sure that what I'm talking about is what you're seeing, and then the teleprompter can kind of be over the script can be over the top of it. So that could be a way of using your second ME on the ATEM 2ME. All right, what do we got now? OWC docks are so expensive. Are they worth it though? I think if you're going to go, you got to do the whole system. So it's I don't want to say it's investment, because I guess it's an investment in time. I think it gets overused. But if you have a bottleneck in your workflow, you're only as fast as that. And so what I was saying before of like, if my main workstation is here but I want to have the Mac Mini running the media, then I need a fast link. Otherwise, I'm not going to use my main workstation to transfer media. I'm going to be like getting up and like going over to the Mac Mini and plugging in things directly, or that kind of stuff. So definitely worth it from the speed point of view. Like I said before, I had, it hasn't come up recently, but there was a while where the CFast Express, what are they? They're like CF Express, whatever. The card reader, I'm just looking, I got one plugged in now, was when I was doing longer media copies of like, over 100 gigabytes or something, it would disconnect the disk or something. I don't know. I was having a bit of problems with that. Haven't had it recently, but worth it. BrokeCitizen. Tuning in from North Carolina. Great to have you here. I do have a Cloud Pod. Thinking of the Sandisk Blade Pro station is connected to the Cloud Pod. Any thoughts? The Sandisk Blade Pro, is that the ME2 storage? I gotta check. And the disk Blade, what's the Blade Pro? I'm trying to remember what these ones are. Okay, I think I've got what you're talking about. This probably depends on your workflow, which is this one. Okay, I think this is what you're talking about. And I'm guessing maybe you have cameras or media that sort of use this. I haven't looked into this too much. I had thought it was more temporary media of like in and out. It's probably, you know, the thing with the Cloud Pod is that it's really the USB that is the limitation there, because you've got your it's a 10 gigabit Ethernet connection into the Cloud Pod, but then the USB is only 5 gigabit. Now you can have 2 drives, so I guess, you know, if both drives are running at 5 gigabit, then you're sort of using your 10 gigabit bandwidth, but really what you want is each drive to be able to run at 10 gigabit. That would be ideal. But you know, it's probably fine. I wouldn't use the Cloud Pod expecting like amazing speeds. Like they're good, and I found them useful. But as I said, part of the reason I bought it was more for portability than it was for kitting out a permanent solution in a studio. So that is that's my thoughts on that. Jesse's okay. You're asking each other here. I guess you're having a conversation. Do you use the audio with 2ME? I'm not quite sure which audio you're referring to. I do with my 2ME, I can actually set it up so my voice is isolated, recorded to output number, I don't know, 6 or something, and then output 6 is going into the ATEM Extreme, I think on channel 2 or something like that. And so when I bring my files into an edit, I actually have isolated audio files of just my voice. And so it means I could recut a live stream, take out the music, and do some like, you know, audio cleanup or like process things differently. But that's a really neat way. And check out Ryan Summerfield's video if you haven't done that. Question looks blah, blah. Okay. Looks like you have a web presenter. I use a Voicemeeter Banana to combine audio when using the web presenter on the PC, but I use a gaming headset. Is there a better way to get the audio into the web presenter? Whew. I mean, it depends on the equipment that you've got and what your workflow is. I guess my workflow has been the ATEM, I guess is sort of, I guess you've got your cameras going in the ATEM. I've got my audio mixer also going into the ATEM, and then the ATEM feed is going into the web presenter. So it's already embedded there. And I do have on back order from Sweetwater, because B&H doesn't, I don't know, forever, it takes forever. Everyone's taking forever. It's just the wing is just taking forever. The Behringer wing is what I'm gonna be putting into the studio here, if it turns up, which is like a 4U rack mounted audio mixer. And so that is gonna be the main audio processing. And I think that'll probably, I'm hoping, give me a better in-ear, where am I? This side. In-ear experience in terms of listening to things, because I listen to the show, but then I actually like switch it off, and because otherwise I get a delay in my voice and it throws me. But so that's some of the audio. I just, you know, I think ideally keep them separate. Where I find the ATEM useful is, like, for example, I have a hyperdeck, which is playing back the show opener if there is one, and the show music. Or today I just had a studio shot, and the hyperdeck was just pulling the music from that. And so then in my automation here, when I start the show, I've got the music up on, I think the hyperdeck's on input 13 or something, and I can use Companion to duck the music when I start the show so that my voice is over the top. So the ATEM is really good with being able to automate things easily. So that's one route that I have going here. Excellent. All right. Let me see what we got before we go. Thanks for all the questions, and hopefully they gave an idea of what to do with a Mac Mini. So let's take a look at, next week, we're gonna take a look at Companion 101, getting started in Companion in 2025. I figured for my 101st episode, that I should do a sort of 101 look at Companion. So we'll just sort of go back to what is Companion, how to put it together, and get back to the basics so that if you are new here on the channel, you can get an idea of how to run Companion, because it's grown a lot in the last 5 years or so that I've been using it. So we'll take a look at that. Until next week, take care, and I'll see you then.